on that this year to have even a better year next year. So I've decided to go ahead and take 15 to 20 players and run it by myself. So we have 15 players. Um, we're well, I think, well placed on the map. Before I start, I would like to say that I'm not an historian. Some facts are different, and I do understand that the Protestant started in 1532, but it's still part of the game. I do understand that some um, facts may be a bit different, but we decided to keep them to bring in another level in the game. So we have used modernized wording so people could also play the game and feel it's easier to understand, because we need to also know that we've had university teachers playing it. We had people in mechanics and in all walks of life, and we don't have always the same understanding of the rules or the words. So we try to make it player friendly, if I can express myself this way. So if you have the document in front of you, it's going to be a lot easier to understand what I'm going to go through. If not, it's fine. Obviously, this is being recorded, and you'll be able to sit down with maybe coffee and look at it when you have a chance. So, the first module is a module that actually in your spreadsheet will is not related to you. What I did is attach what we can see as map with EX in bracket. It's an example of a map. So your maps will be actually sent to you by email in an Excel document. In the past year, we've found that if we put the map in a Google Docs document, it was hard to zoom in and zoom out. And often the players were getting lost at where they were at. So by sending it by email in an Excel document, you'll be able to take notes, you'll be able to zoom in, zoom out, and kind of move around and better understand where you're located and what move you want to make. But what I did for today is try to put a normal square. So that's what we call a big square in the game, if you want. Um, and kind of put everything you could actually encounter in games. So on the top left, and obviously the colors are a lot better in Excel, but in the docs, top left, you have kind of that off-white. That type of tile will be usually kind of a weird yellow. It's a desert, yeah, desert tile. So basically, that's a tile that you'll find in Africa, Mid East. There's some bit more east, but what you need to understand is that that type of tile reduce unit movement by 50%. The orange just beside it is hill or desert hills. They reduce movement to 75%. Uh, it's again a tile that you'll mostly see south, rarely north, but it's a tile that you could potentially see. Then you have the shades of gray, so plains like forest, deep forest. Again, there are regular movement. You have the two shades of gray, that is light mountains and heavy mountains. Heavy mountains and snow top or snow um, are the only tiles that you can't actually cross, so you'll have to go around. So it's important to see that on your map and plan accordingly. Rivers, lake are that shade of blue. Again, you can cross one square, meaning you would cross a river or part of the lake where it's narrow. You cannot do two square one after the other. Then you have the coastal waters and deep sea. Deep sea is really for fishing. We have deep sea fishing. So at that point, that's the type of the squares you're looking for. Coastal water do permit fishing, but it's not as efficient. Other blocks you can see or potentially see on your map is when you start building roads or canals. What roads do is they make transport in units move twice as fast. So if you have a unit that's doing 30 squares, and what we mean by 30 squares is 30 little squares, the road would double that to 60, so making movement between cities a lot faster. Canals permit boats from basically going through them. If I wanted to link that lake to the coastal water, I would build a canal. I could then build a shipyard on the lake and have the boats going to the ocean through the canal. Um, the blue where it's written U, it's going to be like that on your map. That's basically your city you're starting in. Um, it's affected by the environment around it. So if you have a lot of deep forests, agriculture will be harder. If it's in the desert, same thing. If it's near plains, agriculture is good, but hunting may be a bit harder. So you need to understand that each square has an impact on the city it surrounds. Um, Now you have the pink, red, and purple. So those are type of cities or villages. So a major difference between this year and the past 2 years, we used to have different shade of red for major cities. So the player could define this is a bigger major city than this one. This year, we're removing that. We're putting major city red. The reason behind it, after some research, is that um, if you never interact with the city, you don't know what the city is all about. You could know it's a big city and or an economy center, but you can't really define how big it is. So you'll have to find and use tools to define that to be able to move forward. Um, the pink with the lonely number like 3 or it it could be 1 to 20 to 30, but those are villages, and villages are between 1,000 and 2,000 population. Then you have the purple, the BVs. Those are big villages, so those are between 2,000 and 4,000. And then C with the number are cities, so they range between 5,000 and 30,000. You start as a city, so you would be in that bracket. So the way it works is when you get the map, you get the one, two, three, four, five in different categories, being villages, big villages, or cities. And as you explore, they're being added to a sheet, and we'll see that later. Um, Something that I always tell players, and now that it's recorded, it's important I say it. The way armies work for cities, in big villages and village, we're putting major cities aside, is that half their population are men, and from the men population, 10 to 50% are soldiers. So when you're trying to define how much army you should have to attack a village, for example, if the village was 1,000 people, 500 would be males. And of the 500, 10%, so 50 to 50%, 250 would be soldiers. So you're looking between 50 to 250 soldiers in that village. So it's a good way to define how much army you would need if you wanted to attack it. Any question on maps?
No.
No? All right, moving on. The next tab beside it should be the Empire tab. Bear with me, we're going tab by tab, and some of it may not do sense right now, but as we go further, you'll be able to link them to what we saw, and then everything will be clear. Another thing you need to understand, it's a lot of information. If you forget half of it, that's not a problem. I'm always available to do turns by video chat. Eric, Diego, and Danielle did that last year. It worked well. You can ask questions. I provide answers, and at that point, it's easier to do turns. So the Empire tab is basically something you will use mid game to late game. So it's when you start having more than one city, your empire's growing. It's a good way to have a quick snapshot of how your empire's doing. Some people don't like it and like to go city by city and they click each of the tab for each city. Others use that to define where they're going to spend their point for that week. So basically, what it does, it's giving you the name of the city, population, how much LB, large bronze, which is the currency, the general currency, grain you have in your treasury, how much are you bringing in LB or in grain, how many soldiers you have in each cities, how your civic rates are doing. So fire, crime, disease, rebellion, how people are happy, loyal, and all your economy aspects. So how's your city doing with the economy? Um, so like I said, it's a snapshot of your cities. If you scroll down a bit, you will see things like an average of a civic rate. You're going to see how many squares you have explored, seen, how much are belonging to your nation and how much are belonging to other nations. And square declare is once you become an empire, you're going to want to declare territory, saying, this is mine. If you go in there, you're stepping on my land. And that's the way to define how many of those squares are yours. The last part is the money tab. So you can start your own money. It's always compared to the LB. So it could be of equal worth, could be lower, could be higher. It's defined by a bunch of things that is taking out of your spreadsheets, and that will define that number. Obviously, um, to be there's three way to conquer, three ways to expand. We have the economy, we have diplomacy and social, and we have war. So obviously, if you want to be a bit more of an economist and buy people out, which last year was by far the best system used by players, then having your money not only helps you buy out people, but having your own money makes it a lot harder for them to buy you because you need to consider that they need the available coins in your money to be able to buy you. So, money eventually is a good thing to have. But again, some players did very well not having their money, and some people had their own money, and their worth was so low that their building cost a lot more. So you have to be considerate of that too. Any question on the Empire tab? Perfect. Turns. So this is basically the sheet I'll be on when we start talking and you start doing turns. Um, basically, there's information in the sense that each week it's going to be recorded. So if the week prior you want to see what you did, or sometimes I'll see halfway in the game, God, I solved this in that city at the start. How the hell did I do this? Then the player can actually go back, read what he did, and then apply it to the situation he's in. Um, for new players, I've gave some example of actions and how the action points, what the cost is. Again, don't get overly stressed about, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to spend points. It's going to be a bit of a natural thing. You'll see crime rate going up. You don't like it. You'll say, Bruno, I want to lower the crime rate. I said, okay, how do you want to do that? Then we'll start chatting and you'll say, oh, look, I have peelers, which are cops, and can I hire more? I said, yeah, sure. How many do you want to hire? And that will cost you, 10 action points. And then, all right, hiring cops costs 10 action points. Um, Go off the rail if you want to try something new. I want to do this. I'll just tell you the cost. And then we can add to the sheet, or you can actually use the Excel spreadsheet I'll send you, create a tab notes, and take all your notes there too. So what's important for you to know right now? So you have turns, important information, example of action, then you have turns again. To the right of that, you have action and administration. So action underneath, you should have a number there. That's the name, the number of action points you have at this point. We'll talk about more about how to bring that up, but for right now, you need to understand that's how many you have. In administration, it's how efficient you are doing administration. The reason I say that, if we go to turn one, you'll notice to the top right corner of turn one, the number is now 21. You have 26 action point, and now you have 21. It's because each city costs 5 action points to administer, each village 2.5 action points. So we'll see later again how to affect that, how to lower that. You just need to understand that um, at, at this point, administrating a city or village um, change the number of action points you have. I said 26, 21. I do apologize. You all have different numbers. I just have my spreadsheet here on neutral, so I'm just giving the neutral numbers. So if you had 28 action points, your corner would say 23. If you had 21, it's going to say 16, so on and so forth. Any question on turns? Perfect. So we're going to get right in the meat of the game. The first tab that you're going to look every week, and as much as players telling me, I didn't think about the game this week, they always come with their little notepads and their notes. So you will look at that spreadsheet and you will have questions, and that is fine. This is basically everything that has to do with your character, your emperor, your queen, your king. So all his stats, all the information linked to him are on this tab. So the first one is character information. So you'll have to create a name. Please choose a name that's related to the nation. Gender, I've put male, female. Again, I've put the gender that the player is. If you want to change that, there's no issue there. Nationality, why is it important to write it there? It's just as you expand and take over other nations. Remember, I'm going to be administering 15 players, so sometimes I forget what nation you started in, because sometimes the player change its capital to another nation, so it gets confusing. So this is your nation you started in. Your religion, that's also important, because it defines what religion you're following. So if you conquer a nation that's not the same religion as you are, that will have an impact on that city. Some of you have two religion there. Could be Islam and Jewish, could be Catholic slash Orthodox, Protestant slash Catholic. At this point, you can choose one or the other. It's up to you. The reason there's two choices there, it's because your nation have a high enough percentage of two religion or three religion for you to be able to choose. If you don't have that slash there, that means your character is following the main religion of your nation. After that, you have age. That's another major difference than last year. Last year, you all started at 13-year-old, and this year, you're starting at 17. Um, Below it, you have your percentage of death. That's being rolled every week. We're not really going to roll it until you hit 30. When you are 30, you'll see the percentage, and that's the percentage of you dying. So if you die and you have no son or daughter, depending of your nation and your religion, some may not allow a female to become the successful king, queen of your nation. So you have to be careful of that. If you don't have any children to take over, then you lose the game. So at 30, make the math, they start rolling. Nobody really dies at 30, but starting at 35, 40, then at that point, there's a good chance. Last year, the game went really fast. Paul won, I think he was 35. Just know that usually the game doesn't go as fast. So at this point, that may be become an issue for you further on. After that, you have your wife or spouse. Um, Again, we're putting which nationality he's from, religion, and his age. And after that, if you have children, you have to name them, then the age, you have your gender, and you have what we call the overall stats. Overall stats, they're above. We've put the scale there because we had a lot of questions. So if the child was B plus, he's going to get the HP and stat bonus from the player. If he's A, he's getting the bonuses from the player and the spouse slash wife. So when you die and they take over, instead of starting at minimums again, then they have bonuses. So it helps you to start a bit in advance of other players. Beside that, you have brother and sisters. That's something I'm going to ask you the first week we talk. Do you have any brothers and sisters? Well, what's the advantages and disadvantages of having brother and sisters? Brothers are basically loyal to you. So if you have a large army and you're sending that army off to battle and your brother's leading the army cannot be bought, the army cannot be swayed, the army cannot um, uh, turned against you. The army is 100% loyal to you. But if you die, the brother will challenge the throne to take it over. So you need to balance it out. Sisters, sisters can be married to somebody else and make a natural alliance with that city. Again, they are incredible good people to give you information about a city too once they married in. The disadvantage is each week the computer rolls to see if her loyalty changed sides. So it could happen that your sister is actually giving your information to the city she is in instead of doing the other way around. So you have to always balance that and choose if you want brothers and sisters. After that, you have statistics. So statistics is the overview of your character. You have strength, constitution, intelligence, willpower, knowledge, and presence. The first column you saw, nation bonus. So you all have different bonus because you all are different nations. Those are added to the starting points, which is 10, and then you have your total at the end. What do we use statistics for? Is they are directly linked to points and skills. So beside your strength and constitution, you have a column called points. So action points is the number of action you can make in a turn, right? So at this point, it's influenced by knowledge, intelligence, and will. So the more knowledge you have, the more action points you have. So at this point, they are in order. So knowledge has more of an impact than intelligence. Intelligence has more of an impact than willpower on action points. The other one is health. So health is when you lead your army in battle. At that point, they get all sort of good bonuses because you are there, and they cannot be bought or swayed. Um, but accident happens. You're in a war. You're fighting, right? So at this point, the computer will always try to roll to see first if there's danger. If there's danger, are you in harm's way? And if so, then at that point, how much damage did you take? Compare it to your health. Did you survive? Are you injured? And so on and so forth. So health is for that, um, to actually to define that. Immune system is when your city or village is has a disease that comes in it. At that point, obviously, if you're in that city or that village, uh, you have a chance to get that disease. So the immune system stat is to see if you survive, if you're affected, or if you may actually die from that disease. War points are all the bonuses you're giving your army when you're leading them. So obviously, if you don't plan on leading the charge, war points is not your main category. It's not something you will try to invest points in. But if you are, then that's the row you want to be very aware of. Diplomacy, a bit like war, if you're looking to do treaty, if you're looking at doing social policies, the diplomatic row is the row to look at. And economy, same thing. If you want a strong economy, if it's something you want to focus on, then at that point, the economy points are where you want to focus your energy. Obviously, we'll talk about skills later. Skills are also influenced by the statistics they're linked to. Research. Obviously, research is part of the game. I always give the same bonus to everyone so they understand at first. Irrigation is a good research to start with. We call it, administrator call it farming one. We have farming two, three, and four. But farming one is irrigation. It gives you bonuses to farming and harvest. So at that point, that's something you can research and have your farm being more productive. Now, there's, I think, over 200 and some research you can do. We have a spreadsheet. Don't be afraid to ask if you can research something. If you can, even if you aim at level three, we'll tell you the level one and you can start with that. Another things you need to research is your special unit. So each nation has their own special unit. Obviously, you want to research it to have that edge in combat if needed. All right. Skills. Skills are, like I said, linked to stats. Those are giving you bonuses, obviously. You cannot put more than 100 point in a skill. Um, to compare, to raise one statistics of 1 point, you need 5 action points. So if I wanted my strength to go up by 1 point, I would spend 5 action points to have it raised by one. Where skills are one for one. So if I wanted to raise my tactic offensive by 1 point, it would cost me 1 action point. Like I said before, the maximum is 100 point invested, but that doesn't mean at the end you can have 110, 115, depending on the bonuses you're having to that skill. So the first skills in pink and white are based on war skills. So if you're planning again on defending your own city, if you plan on attacking and leading the charge, those are skills that will be vital for you. All the skills in purple are what we call social, cultural, diplomatic skills. So they will affect your social abilities, cultural, so anything that has to do with happiness, has to do with loyalty, has to do with uh, fire, crime, disease, um, all of those things, religion issues are all in purple, and they're really your social skills. If you plan to do a lot of treaty, going that route with city, villages, those are the type of skills you need to possess to be successful in doing those type of things. After that, we have the greens. Greens is economy. So we're trying to color code stuff. So you'll see that every time you see a purple on your sheet, it's usually linked to a social skill. If it's green, it's money. If it's that crazy orange, it's going to be farming. And red is usually war. So green is economy, trade, tax, import, export, stability, your upkeep infrastructure, construction is all put into your economy skills. So if you want a rich and vibrant economy, if you want to start to buy off stuff, really want to focus on your own money, those are the type of skills you will need to possess to go forward. Then you have your agriculture, because you need to understand that in medieval times, really the economy at between 50 and 75% was was led by farming or livestock of some sort. So at this point, they have their own skills. So livestock, fishing, agriculture, and hunting are part of those skill set that you should try to maximize if it's the intake of food or commerce, trading fur and stuff like that is something you value. Um, the last one, not really in one category, is the skill administration. If you remember in turns, I told you cities cost 5 action points to administer and villages 2.5. Um, by raising this skill, you lower the amount of administration point you're losing per turn on cities and villages. The last section before going to questions are the diplomacy tab. Change a bit from the few years. It seems every few years it gets revamped. We've put the skill on top. So each time there's a city, it's going to be evaluated from 1 to 8. 1 being they want to get to war with you, they want to kill you. To 8, they are thinking you're the best thing since sliced bread, that you are an awesome city to have as an ally. What's the effect on that is once you have your map, I'm going to write the name of the cities or identify the C1, C2, C3, put the relationship in, and then it's going to give you a number for the treaty and the join. What are those stats? Is if you're really diplomatic and you're going in that route and using the right skill and the right people and the right infrastructure, you can actually get people to ally with you and attack other people and help you out. Or they can actually join your empire without even attacking them or buying them out. So that percentage is based on your skill set. Um, the other column beside it, called buyout, is simply if you want to go the economy route and buy the city out, buy the village out, that's the amount of money you will need to buy it out. Now, again, those numbers are standard just because I didn't input any population in it. As I input stuff in, those number will vary and you'll see the result. So it's an important way, it's a good way of looking at cities and major cities, village, big village, to see if you want to buy them out, if you want to attack them, or use more of the diplomatic approach. When gaining a village, a big village, or a city by war, you get money and you get the population. So each small village gets you $150,000, big village 300,000, a city 1 million, and a major city 1.5 million. So that's what you do when you conquer it. You get the population and you get the money. When you buy it out, you get the military and you get the population. When you do it diplomatically, you get the population and you get money. All right? So, different approach brings different things. Also, when people are joining you in a diplomatic way, it has no impact on loyalty or happiness within your city. Where when you do it military and with the economy, you have a bit of that coming in because they didn't want to come in the first place, right? It's just people with swords telling them to move, or basically saying you have no more money, no house, no nothing. You have to move in order to gain that back. Any question on the character sheet? Again, a lot of information. I do understand that.
How old does your kid have to be to take over?
So technically 10, ideally 13. So at 10, he will have some disadvantage, but still can rule.
Cool.
Any other questions? Perfect. Moving to the next tab, the city tab. So you have one city now, and obviously each time you'll add a city, I'm going to add a tab with the name of the city. So at this point, all the city you possess will be at the bottom, and you'll be able to click on them and see exactly what's happening in each city. Again, like I said before, some people like to look city by city. Other people use the Empire tab to kind of give them an idea of where they have to spend action points. So the city with the underlined yellow is the city usually you're in. And because you're in it, it's now your capital city. So the first thing you'll see on top of your city, and the cities you're seeing now is actually your city. So the numbers you're seeing is the numbers you'll have to deal with. Has first you'll have to name your city, just because it's yours to start with. I'll let players pick a name for it. But beside it, you have treasury. So every player starts with 100,000 LB, 100,000 grain. We are still debating if it won't be 200,000, just because last year we did that and we felt that it helped, but again, made the game go a lot quicker. So we're debating if we're keeping it at 100,000 or if that's going to be raised. Beautiful thing about Google Docs is that if we choose to go to $200,000, you will open your document and it's going to be updated and you'll see it and you'll know you have more money to deal with it. So, beside it, you have your income. So, basically, in turns, you do 2 turns per week, turn one, turn two. Turn one is winter, spring, and turn two is summer, fall. So in your first turn, it's all the economy. So for example, here you would lose or gain the amount of LB under your income. And then in your turn two, your grain would be added or subtracted from your treasury. So turn one money, turn two grain. Right now, all your cities, if you combine grain and LB, are in the plus. It might not be a big plus, but they are positive. Something you need to also understand when you're in this city, for example, or any other city, and the ruler's in it, You can pay for stuff in grain or in money. When you are not in that city and buying something, it has to be in LB. So that's treasury and income. Now, the next one is a purple kind of bracket. So it's social, it's cultural, it's diplomatic. So it's going to give you a better idea of what's happening in your city. So religion, nationality are something we worked over the summer. We worked really hard. Last year, we had a lot of issues in the sense it had minimal impact. This game, hopefully, it has more of an impact. So, religion basically, your nation starts with a main religion or two religion that are equal, or sometimes three. That's okay too, but it's going to define your main religion at the bottom. And then at that point, it's going to work within those religions to see how much tension you have. So obviously, um, you want your main religion to be really higher. If not, if it becomes equal, then you need to deal with that. It has advantage and disadvantage. Obviously, if everybody follows the same religion, you don't have those type of issues. But it needs time, it needs infrastructure to convert people to your religion. If you're going for a more of a multiculturalism approach, then at that point it has a different positive, but obviously you have to deal with the fact that there's multiple religion and that can bring tension amongst them. Nationality, same idea. You know, I start in France and I start to conquer north to Norway and Sweden, which are Vikings, and we don't see our culture is really very different. So at that point, it's going to have an impact on my city. It's going to have an impact on my empire. So I want to first create that sense of empire. So we're not Viking or French. We're more of this empire, or we're multiculturalism again, and we're letting culture flow and coexist. And then at that point, it also have advantage and disadvantage in your city. So again, up to you, but it will have eventually an impact on your empire. Social economics is really for that city. So you have different um, uh, level, if you want, of people. It's based mainly on education and on rank and on money, and so basically slave or slave. It's they are what they are. We used to put beggars. Some players got offended by the term, so we're now saying unemployed, meaning there are member of your community that are not working with working on the community itself. Poor are your minimum wage or lower workers. Working are your bulk of your workers. Bourgeoisie is basically your high paid and small merchant. Noble are your rich people that are really having some title or piece of land. And then your court are people really close, like advisors, generals, and stuff like that. Um, we are keeping tabs on how many slaves you have because it does have an impact on the city, but overall on the empire. You're unemployed, um, and the number of people working in your city. So the way it's defined is that all your men are eligible workers and half your female population are also eligible for work. Um, civic rates are basically rates in your city about crime, fire spread. So if something starts, let's say a farm is under fire, then the computer will start rolling to see does it stop to that farm or does it spread out? and how much does it spread out. So the higher the percentage, the more chance you have it to spread out in your city. Disease, the percentage of chance there's a disease um, staying, but also arriving into your city. Immigration rate, birth rate, culture, loyalty, happiness, rebellion. So the percentage of chance of people trying to kick your ass and kill you. And then you have the two stats that are linked to religion and nationality. They're linked to more, but those are two key components. Is patriotism, sorry, my French here, and multiculturalism are two aspects, and they're fighting one another. So each have advantage and disadvantage. Pat is Rome uh, type of approach. France, United States, Russia, they are a country that are pushing everyone into the melting pot, into being one nation. It has great advantage when it comes to birth rate, loyalty, happiness. Um, Not so great for immigration, um, but it has that feel to it. Multiculturalism is more like the Byzantine Empire. It's more like Canada or Sweden, where the approach is a bit different. So it's not very good when it comes to loyalty. It's not very good when it comes to fear, but it's awesome when it comes to immigration. It's good also when it comes to rebellion. So two different approach. Not one's better than the other. They just touch different things, but both of them are actually directly linked to your religion and in nationality. I mean, if your empire's feeling is really high, you have one religion. Normally, you'll be a bit more towards the pat section. If you have a lot of religion, a lot of culture, and you're pushing that a lot with policies, then at that point, multiculturalism is going to be higher. Beside it, on the right, you have your population, and we break it down for you: men, women, children, elder, birth rate, immigration, and death. So at this point, um, each works into the other. You're all in the positive in the sense you should be gaining population each week until you start building stuff and messing around with your city. May go up, may go down. It's going to be in your hand at that point. Any question on that section? All right. Farming, food, very important. I addressed it earlier. It's a great part of the economy. It's a great part of medieval times. Um, so it's broken down for you. If we start at the top right, you see your total grain income. You see your export income because you can actually export goods, being wheat, rice, vegetables, spice, nuts, wool. So at that point, it's a good way of doing money. Beside that, you have the total farming land. So, like I said, the square beside your city has an effect on the city. If you're surrounded by desert or surrounded by heavy forest, you have less land to farm. But you have more hunting grounds, or you have other advantages um, because of those squares. Obviously, if you're beside a river, a lake, an ocean, you will see that there's a number at total coastal sea fishing. It's all about the fishing. Now, you don't have a map of your city, and I'm well aware of that, and I do apologize. We're still working on the map, so you are located on that map. We know what's directly beside you, but in order to send you the map, we wanted to be able to give you that big square for every player, and we're missing a few of them. So probably next week, you'll receive an email with your map. You'll be able to match those numbers with your map and see exactly what's happening. All right. but I'm just giving you a hint. If you have a number near coastal sea, means you're beside water. So coming back to farming, um, you can farm wheat, oat, and rice. Um, I'll be honest with you, we just try to give a bit diversity. Um, if you only cultivate wheat, it's fine. If you do only rice, it's fine. If you want to have two or three different, it's fine too. Each have their own little perks that you may not see, but obviously, if you only eat wheat, compare at two different food source, I don't know. It may have an impact. It may not. I'm just giving you a little idea here of maybe something you may want to look at. Fruit, vegetables, you can do that. Exportables are mainly stuff you're going to cultivate that's going to be able to create um, a source of income. Obviously, barley and wool are good ones, not spice. If you want wool, you need sheep, and we'll get to that. And obviously, you can use those to do other stuff too. So stay open minded. Think of stuff you could actually do at one point. Fishing is lower. Obviously, fishing is fishing. So if you want to see how much production, if you want to sell your fish at that point, that's where you're going to see it. Beside that, you have what we call secondary in cattle. So hunting grounds brings fur and traffic. It can also brings food. So at that point, that's something you can do. Some players approached us saying that in medieval time, there was a lot of beehives and honey and all of diverse stuff you could do. So we've put that in. Cattle is another good way of getting some grain. So we've put the cattle in. Um, it's been there since the beginning of the game. Some years everybody's using it, other years nobody's using it. It all depends on what you're comfortable with and what you want to do. Um, Usually, the first year you probe around, you try different things. And as you go along, you have a better idea of what fits you because it's all about you, and every player is different, every empire is different. So at that point, feel free to do it or not. It's not a deal breaker. Just know that if you have cattle, they take farming land to be on. So if you want more grain, then at that point you have to let go of the cattle. If you want to mix and match, it's up to you. Any question on food? All right. Moving to the economy tab or economy section of that tab, um, you need to understand that, like I said, farming was a big thing, but one main source of economy that every castle or city had was a market where trade was done, where merchants could trade resources. And obviously, if you want to be an economic center of your region, you need a good market. So the way markets work, again, we had to put that in gameplay. We had to put in the way that it made sense to all players and it's easy to use. We've divided in different sections. So the number, you have one market to start with, and we've defined that each market has 100 stands or 100 section of where trade can happen. Right now, some of you have 20, some of you have 25 stands, other has 30. All depends on the region you're at. Um, those are the number of stands that are active right now that are actually bringing you money. After that is what your market is worth, the upkeep paid to keep it in good shape, your taxes rate on trade. So that's an important part. So each time A trader makes a transaction, 25% of the money made goes into your pocket. So that's what the tax rate is. Then you have your income, so the amount of money it's bringing in, your rent, so how much you're asking the trader or merchant per year to have the ability to trade in your city. Your economy plays a role on that. So remember those economy stats we spoke about. The number there is the impact on the market. So the higher, the better. Then your stand possible. So how much of an economy do you have going gives you the amount you can build. So right now it could be higher, could be the same, could be lower. If it's lower, obviously you can't build more. If it's higher, you can go to that number of stands. Major, don't pay attention to that. When you become a major city, other formula comes in and plays with the numbers for you and are able to boost your economy and have more markets. Below that, below the market, are infrastructures. So all the buildings you can actually build are there. Some are blacked out because you have to find out by yourself what they are. Others are in green, and others are in gray. Gray, it's basically all the type of churches, temple, mosque, synagogue, temple that you can build. Obviously, if you're Catholic, you're building a church. If you're Muslim, then at that point it's a mosque. If you're Jewish, synagogue, and so on and so forth. So again, those who want to be a bit more multicultural or has multiple religion and wants to stabilize it in their city, then would build different church to be able to keep it steady. All those building has a purpose. Fishing boats, obviously, are for fishing. Fishing ship, remember that deep sea, going deep in the ocean to get bigger fish, bigger amount of fish. You'll need fishing ships. Docks and shipyards are actually only for military ships. So you need a ship's yard to build it. You need docks to actually have them near your city. Lumber mill if you want to cut wood. If you, again, looking at your map and there's a lot of wood, that's something you may want to do. Farms, well, you have the number of farms you build. On the other side, you have a bank, a mint, that's needed to start your own money. A trade center lets you transfer money into grain, grain into money. Then different mines, refinery, your castle where you're living, pastures if you want cattle, bridge, canal, road, we spoke about it. Toll, because you can actually put tolls that existed. Thank you, Romans. So you could actually make people pay tolls, merchant and people. Do know that if you have a toll, your economy is also being impacted there. Then you have your different type of academy, your special, your siege weapons, your heavy cavalry, heavy infantry, heavy archers, and your special units. If you want to build any type of heavy units, you need an academy to do so. After that, going back to the right, you have your economy score. It's in yellow. Very important stats. It tells you how vibrant your city is. The higher the number, the more stands you have, the more money you're making, the more money exchange is happening. That's good all around for you. Then some people wanted to break it down a bit. So how much import, how much export? If your export number is higher than import, that's good. That means you're exporting more than you're importing in. Employment, your percentage of employment, that plays a role in your economy, obviously. Structural is the amount of value, passive value you have. So every building, every ship you have, goes into structural. So that's a worth of your city. So the bigger the city, the better the structural, obviously. Then you have your income per population. So if it's in the minus, it's because you're not there yet. You're not an economy center. It's not going super well. You start in a small city, don't have a lot of income to play with. So that's perfectly normal if it's lower. Then you have your treasury per population. You have 100,000 dollars LBs and 10,000 population. That means each population technically you have 10 LB for each member of your population. In upkeep percentage, it's 10%. That can be changed not by you, but by becoming a better at upkeeps. And as your economies get better, that percentage goes lower. On the right of that, you have your tax rate for everything. So farming is 50%. So every farmer that does harvest has to give 50% to you, which is a kind of an average here. Some did 35, some did 70. It depends on the time period, depends on where you're located on the map at certain times. If you had a Tsar that really wanted more, he went all the way to 80% sometimes. And then you had certain kings in Europe that were as low as 35. You can change that, obviously. Your export tax. So each time you're exporting something or importing something, it's being taxed. Fishing, 50% again. On income. So the farmer, you're taking half of his harvest, but you're paying him. So you're taking 25% of his wage to an LB. So when I say there's poor people, there's actually poor people. Um, your The tax on immigration is more when a new people enters your city, you charge money, you take money, and obviously it's the guards doing it. Um, it's it's kind of a one that you can play with. You can actually get really good at it, but it's more on the black market side. So, but we put it there because some players use that in game. Markets, we've defined it. Your stand, so it's at 25% right now. Below that, we wanted to give you an idea of your economy a bit more in general. Um, where you can actually search for minerals. They're there, they're listed, and their worth is there. Forest is there because it's a natural resources. Obviously, you want to use. On the right of that, you have all the stats, but in money terms. So animal export income from markets and taxes, upkeep, how much money you're spending in upkeep, your wage in LB and in grain, and your food export. Um, Below that, it's probably one of the numbers that you will use a lot during the game. So I don't know what your number is, but on my spreadsheet here, it's 126,845 LB. That's the amount of money I can spend to buy you out. So if you own a city and I just want to buy it from you and it becomes mine, that would be the amount of money I would need to spend. Now, there's several things that needs to happen before we get there. We've put it down, we revised them this summer. So number one, the player needs to know you exist. He needs also to know where your city is on his map. So if I know Danielle exists in China, for example, but I don't know where her city is, I can't buy a city I don't have on my map. The second condition is that I actually have a unit in her city. It doesn't matter which unit, as long as I have a unit in it. Then I need to have um, I have to have an economy score higher than hers. You will see economists usually don't do buyouts from the same city. You have economy centers that are buying left or right. So that city needs to have a higher score than the city they're trying to buy. Obviously, if they have their own money, you need to have access to some of that money to be able to buy them out. So those are all conditions prior to trying a buyout. So don't get nervous about it now. Just know that when you get in contact with a player, you need to be aware that now that's part of the game. Um, so keep an eye on it for sure. But like I said, the first few weeks, don't stress out about it. Then we have employment. So we've mentioned people working for you. We tried several ways where we try to put in the a more complex system where employment was among themselves and you were just there to collect tax. It never worked. The best way we felt in 20 years was to directly put it down and make them your employees. So you have peelers, which is cop, apprentice, overseers that works in mines and refineries. Vigile, your firemen, farmers, rat catchers, hunters, beekeepers, so on and so forth. They're all there. You can hire them, and they all do different things. Obviously, there's some that's blanked out, and there's some we didn't even put in by fear of being discovered. So the list is a lot longer. If you want, ask a question. If you have an idea of an employee you would like and you think would have an impact, it's probably there. We'll just add it, and at that point, away we go. Military is more standard. Infantry, cavalry, archer, siege engines. You have the type light, medium, heavy. Remember that anything that's heavy and the siege engines needs academy to be built or trained. They all do their they all have their advantage or disadvantage. Um, for some reason, each player thinks that one type is theirs. I have often people that will refuse to hire infantry, and I have people that will only hire infantry. Some archers are their to go unit, others don't. It's up to you. You're going to go to war, and at one point, one unit's going to click for some reason. They had a good comeback. You're now in love with that unit, and you're going to go forward with that one. Obviously, cavalry has better movement than infantry. Archer has better range than cavalry and infantry is a bit better when it comes to the defensive aspect. Um, Below that, you have your special unit, and you have a bunch of blacked out units again that you may think of that you can use for different aspects that's related to war. Your special unit, again, unique to your nation. Um, and they have different stats, they have different feel, different way of doing things. Um, on the right of that, you have generals. So if you want your army to be led properly, you may want to hire a general. They have their own stats and bonuses that they give different units. Obviously, you pay them, and the wage kinds of define how much it would cost or how much sway can they be to switch sides. So a well-paid general is always a good thing. Lower than that, you have the C units. Again, each nation have different C units. I should say region. Uh, uh, for sure, England and the UK region, if I can express myself that way, have a type of units. The Vikings have their own. Um, Africa has their own with the Middle East, India, and so on and so forth. It's more per region. If your nation is not really near any ocean, deep inside a continent, then at that point you will have the generic boats, which is the Birding and the Nova, which are basically ships that were really merchant ships and known across the world. They're easy ships to build and maintain. They're not the best ships, but they float. After that, you have the defense. So right now, you have wooden walls. What you need to understand is wall is extremely important in defense. Major cities all have a minimum of one stone wall. And the bigger they are, the more walls they have to a maximum of four. Those are what we call major cities. Um, they consist of London, Paris, Rome, um, uh, Constantinople. I'll say it in French because I'm unable to say it in English. Um, New Delhi, Shanghai, and St. Petersburg. The rest are maximum um, three walls. And again, there's a really distinct list for those one, and then one and two are more common. Obviously, uh, when wars happening and fighting's happening for the more experienced players, the second years players, should I say, walls do make an impact on winning and losing. And then the last is transports. So you could actually have stuff being transferred from one city to another, from a village to a city, um, to compensate. Often players choose to pay their army or have a big army paid from one city. So other cities will transfer resources to be able to maintain that army. So at that point, you'll need transport. Could be transport by land or transport by sea. Those transport can be attacked. Those transport can be raided. There's a lot of things you can do with transport, or make try to make them safer. On the opposite side, there's a lot of ways to finding out where the transports are and attacking them, or being very efficient at taking your stuff. So that's the city tab. Remember, you'll have that tab for each city or village you possess. Um, it's a lot of information. I do understand that. And like I said, give yourself time. There's certain stats that will not talk to you. If you're not an economist, as long as you make enough money, you'll never look at the economy tab, and that's fine. Other people, it's really war oriented. Others need to have perfect civic rates. They will spend so many points on that. That makes them feel good and they are having fun doing it. That's good in my book, too. There's no right or wrong way. Um, it's up to you. And that's the beauty of the game. It's very open ended in the sense that Paul played 8 years to Pote, and last year was his year. Everything went for him, and he won. Um, Before that, we had very military people winning, and that's good too. And we had people win by diplomacy, just conquering and moving forward by having strong alliances and people joining their empire. And that is fine too. Choose what you want to do. You can mix and match. You can do one and focus on one. That's fine too. Any question on the city tab or any question on the game so far? So silence is golden.
Sure.
So I take it you have no more questions. If you do, come to have a question, feel free to send me that question in Messenger. I'll answer as quickly as I can. When we do turns, it's a good way to ask question too. We're gonna go through that spreadsheet again together as we're doing turns, so no worries there. Um, Start looking at stuff, seeing what you want to do and how you want to address certain issues. You all have a crime rate that should be somewhat high in fire and disease, and how would you like to handle that? You all have a bit of a rebellion problem. It's normal. You just took the city, your father just died, or your mother, or your cousin, or whatever. So they're not accustomed on your way of doing business. If there's no more question, we will end this. And like I said, it's being recorded, so you have a chance to look at it again and again, see that beautiful face of mine. And at that point, if you come to have any questions, you can always send it to me by messenger or email, or wait for your first week and then we can go through it. All right. Well, on that, I'll wish you a good evening and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.